freedom. For the first time in more than 400 years, God's people are free. God has just used 10 different plagues to prove to Pharaoh that God is the one true God. And Pharaoh lets God's people, the Israelites, leave Egypt. But God did not lead them back to their land on the shortest path. Going that way would make them have to fight through the land of the Philistines. And God said, if the people encounter war, they'll change their minds and go back to Egypt. So God sent them through the wilderness, looping around to the Red Sea. The Israelites went from Succoth to camp at Etham at the edge of the wilderness. And God guided them by being in a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire at night. That way, they could travel both day and night. God was always there. He never left his people. While there at Etham, God spoke to Moses. Tell the Israelites to turn around and make camp on the shore of the sea opposite Baal-zephon. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are lost. They're confused. The wilderness has closed in on them. Then I'll make Pharaoh's heart stubborn again, and he'll chase after them. And I'll use Pharaoh and his army to put my glory on display. Then the Egyptians will realize that I am God. And God worked in Pharaoh's heart. When Pharaoh found out the Israelites were actually gone, he and his servants changed their minds. Pharaoh was determined to chase the Israelites and bring them back to Egypt. He commanded his chariot be readied and his army assembled. He gathered 600 of his elite chariots along with all of the rest of his regular chariots. So the Egyptians gave chase and caught up with the Israelites. As Pharaoh's army got closer and closer to their camp, the Israelites looked up and saw them approaching. Egyptians coming at them. They were completely afraid. It looked like the Egyptians were going to capture them and take them back as slaves, or they were going to drown in the Red Sea. Panicked, the Israelites cried out to God for help. Moses told the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians that you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then God said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to go forward. Hold your staff high, stretch out your hand over the sea, and split the sea so the Israelites will walk through on dry ground." As this was happening, God moved his pillar of cloud to be between the Israelites and Pharaoh's army. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and God parted the water and made the ground dry. The Israelites started to escape across the sea with walls of water on both sides. The Egyptians came after them in full pursuit. Every horse and chariot and driver of Pharaoh raced into the middle of the sea. God looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud. He threw them into a panic and clogged the wheels of their chariots. The Egyptians cried, "Run from Israel! God is fighting on their side and against Egypt." God said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, and the waters will come back over the Egyptians, over their chariots, and over their horsemen." Moses obeyed and stretched his hand out over the sea. As the day broke and the Egyptians were running, the sea returned to its place as before. The water came back together, drowning all the chariots and riders of Pharaoh's army that had chased after Israel into the sea. That day, God delivered Israel from the oppression of the Egyptians, and as the Israelites looked back at what God did, they were amazed and in awe of what God had done. They trusted in God, his power, and his servant Moses. Then Moses, his sister Miriam, and all the Israelites sang a song of praise to God for protecting and rescuing them from the Egyptians.
Good morning, boys and girls. It's so nice to be here with you. We hope you had a wonderful Christmas holiday and a great time with your family. So you just watched a short video, and we're going to talk a little bit about that video now with you this morning.
Right. Let's think about who Moses is and where he's been to up to this point.
Okay. So from the day Moses was born, God had a special plan for it and a purpose for his life. God protected him as a baby. I'm sure most of you remember when his life was in danger. And when Moses was a grown man, God gave him the mission by talking to him through a burning bush.
That was awesome. And God used him to deliver a message to that evil King Pharaoh guy and to tell him to let his people go. But when Pharaoh wouldn't, God brought plagues and he brought some suffering until Pharaoh agreed that he would let them go. But then after God's people, they took off running for freedom, guess who chased after them? It was Pharaoh. He came running after them.
Yes. Now imagine you were the Israelites in this story. You're camping near the Red Sea, and then you looked up and you saw Pharaoh's army coming. After all this time, you were slaves, and you thought you were free, and now you see those soldiers coming. So out of nowhere, Miss Sue, how do you think that you would be feeling and everybody else?
I think I'd be scared, right, and afraid, but then I might be confused because what's going on? So
Right, because God had brought them out of the land. So I'm sure that they felt there was no other way out of their challenge, and they were very frightened. It seemed like they were going to either be recaptured by the Pharaoh's army or maybe be drowned attempting to cross the Red Sea. So they kept looking at their challenge rather than looking and remembering what God had promised to take, how he said he would take care of them. They had forgotten that God had great power and that he had made a promise to them.
yeah, he sure did. But I bet some of you might even be scared today, wondering how things are going to turn out because of what's going around with the virus and things going on with the families. So it's important that you remember that God has great power in all of this, no matter if we can see it or not, and he has everything under control.
Yes, that is so important. We can be assured of this as we look at how God had Moses, how he told him to respond to the people.
Yes, God tells Moses to remind them, keep telling the people that they shouldn't be afraid. And that was hard in that situation, but God tells them that they will be delivered and that he will fight for them. And he tells us that he will do the same for us. Yeah, all we have to do is just be still and let him do the work.
Yes, and I bet, boys and girls, that you all hear your mom and dad, they're saying to you, just be patient, things are going to change, it's going to get better, so just hang in there. But look to God's word, and what a promise and encouragement that Moses gave his people that day. See, God knows that the people were afraid. He knows that we are afraid sometimes, and he wants them to remember that even though things may look terrifying, he has everything under control. He cares for his people. He cares for you. And he was about to rescue them in an amazing way.
He has. Have you ever been in a situation where it just seems impossible and there seems like there's no way out? Or have you been challenged to do something that's like, I can't do that. You're crazy, but you think you just can't do it. But there's a video we're going to watch right now, and we're going to see what they learned during this process. So let's take a look at this video.
So, what kind of challenge do you think we're going to be doing today?
I'm guessing someone's going to be blindfolded. And it's going to have something to do with trust?
You're both right. One of you is going to be blindfolded, and the other person is going to lead them through an obstacle course in the woods.
Well, I definitely want to lead first.
Well, why don't you go ahead and put this on Levi? But I just got to let you know, this isn't your typical obstacle course. You are going to have some random things thrown in your way that you won't expect. Do you think you're ready to take on this challenge?
Yeah.
Guys, I am super impressed by how you managed those surprise obstacles.
I didn't expect this stroller.
Oh, the stroller that came out in front of you? Yeah. What about you, Bella?
I didn't expect the hula hoops to be there.
Yeah, I told you there were going to be some surprise obstacles. I got a question for you. When you were blindfolded, how did it feel to not know what was ahead of you?
Scary. Also because my sister was leading me.
Yeah, so sibling trust, it's there, but sometimes, I saw some moments that you had to suddenly stop. How did it feel when that happened?
I felt nervous because I didn't know if I was gonna trip.
So as the leader, did it sometimes feel like you couldn't avoid an obstacle that got in your way?
Yeah, when there was like a hula hoop, it could just go across the whole trail. So I didn't know where to tell Bella to go.
You had to make these sudden changes, and that didn't feel very good, right? Bella, what about you?
It was just hard to
figure out a way that he could get across and that we wouldn't trip.
That's really nice of you to think about his safety in an obstacle course. So has this ever happened in your life where you were in a situation where you couldn't see what was ahead, you couldn't avoid it, and it just seemed impossible?
Well, I really liked to roller skate, but then I got new roller skates that were almost entirely different, and I had to figure it out almost all over again. And I didn't know what was gonna happen.
Sure, and you had to try and get acclimated to a brand new pair of roller skates when you, in your mind, you're like, I know how to do this, I know I should be able to do this, but you had to relearn it. I'm sure that was probably embarrassing, and you're probably a little scared at times, because you're like, I should be able to do this, and I don't want to fall on my face.
A little bit.
So what did this challenge teach you about trust?
I had to trust Bella to lead me through the obstacle course.
That's true.
It's a lot like how we can trust God with what's ahead of us. He's so powerful and nothing is too hard for him.
Exactly. We can trust God that no matter what is ahead of us, no matter the obstacle, that nothing is too hard for him. He is so powerful, and we know that he's going to do what he sees is best for us. We also know that he rescues his people and protects them.
I think it's your turn.
Oh boy. Here we go.
Okay, so this lesson reminds us that God can do anything. It reminds us that God is powerful and God will do what is best for each of us. We can remember God's promises and take comfort in them. It reminds us that while we know that every situation is different, we can trust that nothing is too hard for God, and he sees and does what is best for each of us.
Absolutely. We've got our memory verse today, and it says, I lift up my eyes to the Lord. From where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And that's Psalm 121:12. Or 1 through 2, not 12. Okay. But that's a great encouragement, a great reminder, because it's God's strength that we need, not our own. So the craft today is going to be, for the older ones, we are going to do, you're going to have Moses in here. And they have the verse on it. It says, and Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. If you remember, how did that water part? It wasn't him. He wasn't out there doing it himself. He only had to do one thing. He had to obey. And in your packet, you've got this little hand that's extra, and Moses. And you can go ahead and color them in. And the only thing you have to cut out is the hand, okay? So you can color it first, or you can cut it first and then color it. But just cut the hand. Don't cut Moses off of this paper, okay? Because you want to keep the verse. So I went ahead and colored mine. And I went ahead and did it. And the other thing you might want to do is you're going to get maybe this white macaroni that's in there. And I just glued it on, okay? So you can use a glue stick, and you're going to put it right on his beard, alrighty? And I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. There's my macaroni on his beard right there, okay? But the one thing we still have left to do is also in your packet you'll have a little brad. And so you're going to poke a hole either with a pin or something sharp or something that, or a toothpick or something. And then you're going to poke this through. You can see it with my glasses, which is a trick. Okay. I have an itty bitty brad. Hopefully yours are bigger than mine. Okay. So there's the one. You flip it over. You open up the back of it so it doesn't fall through. And then it said he stretched out his hand over the sea. And so you can lift up your rod or your staff, and that's what he did. And then God did the rest, and that was awesome. So that's for the older ones. And yet we have another one in here for the littles. And it comes on this sheet. You can cut out just this very outside edge. And then you're going to fold it up on these lines. And we have an example of that here. You're also going to have some little extra sheets of blue paper in there that have already been cut. And then you can take that and either roll them up a little bit to get a little curl in them, and they'll pop out like that. You could take a pencil, do the same thing, but just kind of get it going and it'll curl. And then how they started it here, you're just going to glue them on the back of those blue pieces. So there. So these are the big waves that when they walked through on the dry land, on each side there was water, and yet where they walked, it was dry. And that's another miracle that God did while he was protecting his people and showing him how powerful and that he was going to deliver them and that he was in control of everything. So just remember, if you have any other questions or problems, I think Mom or Dad can help you with these. But we're glad you stopped by and you got to see the lesson and the craft, and we will see you next time.